Well, the new resolution says if you can't effectively social distance indoors or outdoors, you have to wear a mask. And if you don't, you could be fined up to $250. What's really neat, besides being on the grounds of Amazon Air, is all the people that both the airport and Amazon hired. These are dozens of people they signed on for tax incentives. You take a look inside. Black & Brew has been one of the first businesses in Lakeland to enforce this policy. School boards essentially have about 3 weeks to figure all of this out. With many people planning beach days and barbecues for the 4th of July, a St. Pete man wants you to think twice. Tim Picciarello just recovered from COVID-19 and wants you to wear a mask and practice social distancing. It's one of those huge oak trees, over 100 years old, that I just love personally because it reminds me of home. But it split straight down the middle due to those strong Hurricane Irma force winds. And on the other side of this tree, a Mercedes car the owner just paid for. 28-year-old lived here. This is where she was last seen on Sunday. And here in front of the home, you can actually see Haines City police officers waiting to execute a search warrant. This home back here was sold originally back in 2015. At this point, Kelly says she's not even sure where on US 98 this accident even happened, but that's not her biggest concern. She says what worries her is the way she found her son.
It's filling up our ICUs in our hospitals unlike the flu or anything else ever has. A flu doesn't hospitalize 20% of patients and kill 2% of patients.
Typically a vascular surgeon.
It's also a moving target.
Like many of his colleagues, Dr. Todd Berland is instead fighting COVID-19.
What we knew a week ago is we've evolved and improved upon this week.
Working 12 hours straight, doing what he and his coworkers can to save coronavirus patients.
And we're giving varying levels of oxygen with the goal being to try to wean it off, titrate it down, and get them home.
400 to 500 ICU patients, as many as 200 on ventilators.
This thing is very pervasive. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and very contagious.
At the same time, managing family from afar, his wife and boys in New York.
I miss my kids. I don't know when I'll see them again. I do get to FaceTime with them every night, and I actually FaceTime them to sleep.
And Dr. Berland's parents here in Florida.
Since Sister-Day lockdown, they've been doing a pretty good job, I think.
His advice for beating the infection:
frequent hand washing, social distancing. I personally believe that has really worked in New York to flatten the curve. Had we just ignored this, I think the problem would have been much more dire. And we will learn to live with it. We will either become immune via vaccine or a minor infection, hopefully. And just like everything, this too will pass.
7 bilingual women have had enough. ABC Action News getting a hold of this signed letter. All the nurses claiming supervisors at this Florida Department of Health clinic in Haines City told them to stop speaking Spanish among each other, claiming discrimination and harassment for the past 2 years.
What are they thinking?
Faith in Florida speaking on the nurses' behalf now that the Department of Health Administration has stepped in.
How do they think they have right to tell people how do they communicate with each other on their mother tongue?
In the letter, the nurses write their bosses threaten them with removal or transfer to another clinic. Maria Reveges calls this a historic teaching moment.
What is tolerable in society and how far an employer can go?
ABC Action News spoke with one patient who says it's downright offensive.
That's discrimination. That's against the law.
According to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, English-only rules may violate federal laws unless justified by business necessity.
America is the melting pot. We are built on diversity.
The Florida DOH sent ABC Action News this statement saying, "We have received a complaint and are working expeditiously to review and gather information." The Department of Health goes on to say it cannot comment on any pending equal employment opportunity investigations. Today, ABC Action News confirmed the group of women is seeking legal counsel from the Latino Justice, a nonprofit group out of Orlando. A clear, cut and dry case, according to those who support them.
How arrogant can we become?
In Polk County, Andrea Lyon, ABC Action News. Both Avon Park and Polk City prisons have a high number of inmates in medical quarantine. About 145 inmates testing positive for the virus and 180 behind Polk City walls.
You would think the state would do more.
Inmates are not exempt from COVID-19 behind bars. Florida prisoners now with a positivity rate of 10.5%.
We have been put on lockdown because someone started running a fever.
One man inside Avon Park Correctional pleading with his family in an email.
But our beds are only 2 feet apart, and there's 94 in this dorm.
Today we checked, 992 inmates inside Avon Park are in medical quarantine. That's the most in the state. Next up, Polk City with 738 being observed and isolated. Florida Rights Restoration Coalition is calling for more testing.
Number one, majority of the people who are incarcerated are going to get released anyhow, right? And number two, that the guards that are there guarding the inmates, if they get affected, they're bringing that infection back home to their families.
According to the Florida Department of Corrections website, several prisons show little to no testing being done. In a statement, the FDC says it has been successful in keeping COVID-19 out of a majority of our institutions. FDC has also conducted institution-wide testing when it is indicated by a positive inmate. The FRRC calls the lack of testing a death sentence for prisoners.
Tragic, particularly even in the jails. If someone was to go into the jail and now is exposed to these conditions, and they haven't even been tried and convicted yet, they're only there because they're too poor to afford bail, but yet that person actually faces a possibility of a death sentence.
We also compared Florida's testing rate to other states similar to its size. Texas has a much larger prison population, yet has tested about 90% of its inmate population. California, about 60%, but Florida sits at only 25% of its 96,000 inmates tested.
He looks like he's dead. I see blood on his arm.
For every crash you pass, a quarter of those drivers decide to run from trouble.
I don't see him breathing.
Victims often seriously hurt, or in Barry Powell's case, left for dead.
I just want justice for him.
Barry would have turned 30 last December if it weren't for a fight with his sister that led him out onto a dark Bartow road to cool off.
Barry would give you his shirt off of his back.
He was happy-go-lucky. He liked staying by himself. He liked playing the video game.
November 2017, Barry became one of 100 pedestrians to die on the side of a Florida road alone last year. FHP worked about 24,000 hit-and-run crashes in 2017 alone, but ABC Action News found out that only 1 in 8 of those drivers were actually cited with leaving the scene, and 30% of those drivers were found guilty.
Ultimately, what would be better is for the people to stay on scene and provide their information.
In Barry's case, only paint chips and a headlight were collected as evidence.
And that could be it. That could be all we have to go off of in order to determine the vehicle, make, and model to get that case solved.
In this investigation and many others, time becoming investigators' #1 enemy.
If we don't get these drivers within a day or two, the damage can be fixed. The evidence on the vehicle from striking the other vehicle or pedestrian can be washed away with, just simply cleaning the vehicle.
For Barry's family, it's already been 7 months.
I just want the person to come forward that hurt my son.
134 victims' families around Tampa Bay that experienced the same thing last year are waiting for the same answers.
Why he did it and why he didn't stop and call 911. Because, like I say, if he'd stopped and called 911, he might have been hurt, but he would still been alive.
In Polk County, Andrea Lyon, ABC Action News.
And I love it. I love being a big sister.
The typical American family is not this story.
The more the merrier, honestly.
Kiani Arroyo is an only child, sort of. She was what her classmates called
science experiment, or like the test tube baby.
She was raised by her 2 moms, but in her teens grew curious about her donor dad. The search started on social media.
Some pictures started showing up of like, oh yeah, this is your brother, this is your sister.
First Facebook, then a site called Donor Sibling Registry, where she found dozens of half-brothers and sisters.
Including myself, 46.
The list has now grown to 52, including 7 in Florida, siblings in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. the youngest just 1 year old.
But it's crazy that there's so many of us.
Kiani loves her new big family, but not all of her siblings feel the same.
Not that great to say I'm a part of a donor family.
Alana and Joanna, Tampa twins and Kiani's half-sisters. Alana says she wants limits on how many children a donor can father.
It's kind of hard to say. There obviously should be regulations, should be a limit number, but it's who are we to say you can't have this person as your dad?
ABC Action News found when it comes to sperm donations, U.S. regulations are few and there are no limits set by the government. We called Zytex Cryo International, headquartered in Atlanta, the sperm bank behind Kiani and her siblings, looking for answers on how so many children could be born to one man. This is Andrea Lyon with ABC Action News. Zytex wouldn't speak to us on camera, but later admitted it doesn't have accurate information on how many babies are actually born from each donor.
I was a little bit surprised, actually, when I heard about your story.
Shane Plosker, IVF director at the University of South Florida, says a high number of donor births is more of a moral issue than medical risk.
Whether it's safe ethically or whether we feel comfortable with that, that's a whole different story.
For Kiani, her search continues.
I won't know the total amount, and I might never know.
Zytex couldn't tell us how many siblings Kiani actually has. But after we contacted them, the company pledged to change its policy. Previously, the company had no cap in the U.S., saying how many kids could be born to each single donor. Now the company says it's limiting each donor to 15 families in the U.S. and 25 worldwide.
Daddy Duck's coming.
For Kiani, it's become less about numbers
My goal is to meet everyone.
and more about getting to know her new relatives.
One day I can plan a family reunion and have everyone show up.
Andrea Lyon, ABC Action News.
A tragic story just into the ABC Action newsroom. Pasco deputies say they're investigating after a 2-year-old boy drowned in Newport Richey. We're told the boy's grandfather was in charge of the boy and went into the bathroom, and during that time, the boy got out of the house and ended up in the backyard pool. Earlier today, another 2-year-old drowned at a Northport home.
Next at 11, headaches, rashes, even heart attacks. Thousands of women across Florida claim their breast implants are making them sick.
ABC Action News reporter Andrea Lyon uncovers this unexplained medical mystery and how it's affecting those recovering from breast cancer.
It's devastating. It's devastating.
Doctors gave Marissa Branisavlovich the bad news in May of 2018. It was breast cancer.
I opted for a double mastectomy.
After a year of battle,
it is still hard to walk.
Finally, some good news.
The nodes came back all clear.
You beat cancer.
I beat it. The end was going to be having new, big, beautiful breasts.
Hi. ABC Action News was in the exam room.
Excellent.
Great.
How are you?
Good. You ready for next week?
I'm ready.
As Dr. Tutu Chang prepared Marissa for her reconstructive surgery and the risks.
Infection, bleeding, the risk of capsular contracture, as well as the risk of breast implant-associated lymphoma. These are the things that we need to keep in the back of our mind.
I woke up one day with extreme joint and muscle pain.
Lyra Marshall says she wishes she learned more about all the risks before her own implant surgery in 2002.
I remember saying, just fill them up and get rid of the stretch marks.
Marshall wanted to improve her self-esteem, but wound up with a number of unexplained symptoms.
Headaches, migraines, all the time.
Continuing for 17 years.
My body was inflamed, puffiness, heart palpitations.
Then she found thousands of women on social media reporting similar symptoms.
Breast implant illness is real.
But it's a disease not recognized by the FDA or many doctors.
It's very difficult going to your physicians because we are so ill and they have no idea what breast implant illness is.
Patients showing up at this FDA hearing in March pleading for federal help.
My doctors told me that nothing could be found to explain my health problems.
Representatives from all 4 American breast implant manufacturers were there: Allergan, Mentor, Ideal, and Sientra. But the companies argued against their own customers, saying the illness doesn't exist.
In this short period of time, we've fortunately not seen any cases we're aware of with ALCL or even breast implant illness.
And the FDA agrees, saying there's no scientific evidence supporting breast implant illness. But a growing number are coming forward, blaming implants for chronic fatigue, fevers, brain fog, and joint pain.
How many of you were very tired?
ABC Action News spoke to dozens of patients across Florida complaining of breast implant illness, including these 4 local women.
I couldn't hold my phone some days because my muscle pain was so intense. I became sick mommy. That's my 2 young kids. When are you going to stop being sick? It affects your whole life.
The FDA says it has no plans to ban breast implants and issued this warning in May, saying some experience systemic symptoms that may go away when their breast implants are removed.
Vomiting, rashes, my eyes all swollen. They said, we don't know why you had a heart attack. There's nothing wrong with your heart. And the minute I had my surgery, I'm telling you, I was healed.
Breast augmentation is still America's most popular plastic surgery. Just last year alone, more than 300,000 U.S. patients had the procedure. But more and more are undergoing explant surgery to remove their breast implants. ABC Action News uncovered explant procedures up by more than 8,000 in the last decade.
I was a skeptic at the beginning, and then I really became a believer.
Dr. Dave Rankin, a Florida plastic surgeon in the business of giving women bigger breasts, is now seeing more demand for explant surgery than implants.
The best candidate in my practice are patients that are very, very sick. They've tried everything else. They've been to a million different doctors, tried hundreds of blood tests. Nothing comes back. Well, let's try this. And fortunately, many of those patients do get better.
But even Dr. Rankin isn't sure what's causing this mysterious illness.
Additional study and research is absolutely necessary.
Lyra Marshall says she doesn't need a study to know she felt better after removing her implants.
When I woke up, I immediately could breathe.
And now she's warning others.
It's not worth it.
But for the 101,000 women each year seeking reconstruction after cancer,
thousands of goodies from around the world,
the choice isn't as clear.
I just want this so badly.
Marissa is moving forward with her surgery.
I pray it doesn't happen to me.
Since January, the FDA has received at least 370 reports of breast implant illness and is now recommending a more in-depth investigation. Mentor Worldwide, a top implant maker in the U.S., says it's now working with the FDA and doctors to raise awareness about implant risks. Andrea Lyon, ABC Action News.
Now, the most accurate weather team in Florida, ABC Action Weather.
And check out this time lapse. This is the Rivergate Tower Tampa camera. You see the showers and storms rolling on through here earlier this afternoon. And just as they come in and the rain gets real heavy, it starts to let up. And if we hold tight here,